Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Conan. Today, I'm going to talk about my thoughts on the Eastern Conference. I made one of these videos about the West a few days ago. A few of y'all said that, hey, I'd like to see the East version, and, I just felt wrong to do the West one and not do the East. So, here are my thoughts on the Eastern Conference, which I think is incredibly hard to predict. I've thought about it. I'm nowhere near as solidified. Like in the West video, I talked about how I kind of had these tiers of teams. I don't really have that in the Eastern Conference. So let's just go ahead and jump into it. I didn't do any planning. We'll see where I'm at. Bottom of the East, it's going to be the Brooklyn Nets. And at the top, I feel pretty good about Cleveland and New York being the top two teams. I do think the Cavs repeat as a 1 seed. They were just too dominant in the regular season last year, even when they kind of slipped at the end. But even still, they held down that spot. They were the 1 seed the entire season. I do think the Cavs are again going to be the 1 seed, especially because the Celtics aren't there now. The Knicks were the next seed, but they were really far back. I think they are better this year for sure. Yabu, Jordan Clarkson, I think are going to be difference makers. There's a lot of players that were getting playoff bench minutes for them that don't even have jobs right now, with Precious and Landry Shamet, and it just was ugly. Anytime the starters checked out, I do still have concerns about that starting unit, about how they're going to look defensively with Brunson and Cat having to be on the court, in those big time moments, closing out games. And I think Cleveland's kind of a bad matchup with the size there in that front court and just the overall firepower on that offense. But the Knicks are certainly capable of winning the Eastern Conference. And I do think they're the second best team out there behind Cleveland, who I just think is a bit more complete. Losing Ty Jerome hurts, but you still got all the talent that you could ask for with Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, who will miss the beginning of the season. So maybe that's enough time for the Knicks to go ahead and sneak and grab a 1 seed. But I still think I'm going to stick with Cleveland, but I think it'll be close between these two teams. I think they'll be maybe by far is crazy, but pretty comfortably the best two records in the Eastern Conference is where I'm at the moment. And I've got pretty much no idea, the rest of the way. At 14, probably go with Washington. They were really bad last year. I think they'll be better. Young players going to improve. Chris Middleton, CJ McCollum, some veterans in that mix, but I don't think it's going to be enough to catch up to what I think is a pretty decent crop of next few teams. I think next I might go with Chicago and then a Charlotte. And the Hornets and Bulls both feel like teams that could be in the play-in, but I think with the Bulls, Giddey and Kobe White kind of figured it out, and I'm high on Buzelis, but I don't think they're a super talented team, and I hope at some point they realize they need to lose games and get a top pick to find somebody to build around. Don't think they'll ever do that. Hornets, just with the injuries that they always have, maybe I should move them down to 13. I want to be optimistic about the Hornets so bad. I want to believe they're going to take a bit of a jump and maybe even be a play-in team, but I think they're just kind of a year away from really getting to that point. I'm excited to see Brandon Miller, a real year 2 for him after year 2 is cut so short. Hopefully LaMelo can stay out there, and Trey Man. There's so much fun young talent on this team. Sexton coming in, I think, is a difference maker. Kind of weak at the big man position, but there are some fun options there. 3 seed. Who's going to be the 3 seed in the Eastern Conference? So let's talk about a few teams that are in that conversation for me. Atlanta, Orlando, Philly. I'm kind of buying in on Philly a little bit, but they're always injured, so maybe really not. And then Detroit. These are the next few teams. I do think Boston and Indiana are both going to take massive drops. The front court is just so weak beyond Jaylen Brown for the Celtics. It's probably going to be Sam Hauser starting. I would imagine Chris Boucher comes in. He's a decent big man option, but it's Neemias Queta. They trade away George Niang, so he's not even there now. I think they're going to give guys run maybe Jordan Walsh some minutes to try and figure out who's going to be part of this next era in Boston. I don't think they're going to be particularly good defensively. I think offensively they could have some explosions, but Jaylen Brown's going to be their one option. Tatum, I think people underrate how much of a glue guy that Jason Tatum is, how good he is. I still think he's probably one of the most underrated players in basketball. If you ask a casual fan, because everyone hates the Boston Celtics, but Tatum is ridiculous. And when you get rid of Drew and Porzingis, these 2 great defensive pieces as well, they're going to slip. I think the Celtics probably still end up in the top 10, but I wouldn't be shocked if they were a full-on lottery team just because Brad Stevens is who cares? So I think Boston, Indiana kind of around this type of range. And I think kind of Toronto there, and then Milwaukee, Miami. This is not the order. This just is kind of giving you an idea of kind of where I'm picturing every team. Who's going to be my 3 seed? I want to go with Orlando. Because they went, I believe, 41-41 last year. They went 500, and that was with major injuries to Paolo and Franz, Jalen Suggs, they bring in Desmond Bane now, who's I think is going to be so good for this team. The big position is still kind of weak. I wish they would upgrade it. Nothing against Wendell Carter. He's like a fine option, but I wish they'd get like a really good big, like a real full-on floor-stretching big. I still think they need more shooting is another thing. Like, I don't trust this team shooting. I'm kind of between them and Atlanta, I think. Philly, honestly, if I knew they were going to be healthy, I'd also put in this conversation. But I just don't know if I trust that. I am a believer in Philly, though. I've decided to stamp that I'm going to believe in the Philadelphia 76ers. And I'm probably going to look like a fool, look like an idiot, but there's just so much talent on that team. And fingers crossed we get some version of Embiid that once we're used to. So, yeah, I think maybe I'll go. And Atlanta's going to be really good. I think Atlanta's going to be really, really good. Trey, I also think, is underrated. Jalen Johnson's awesome. Dyson is awesome. Reece Shea was really fun. I think Porzingis, obviously, how much is he going to be on the court? We don't really know. Porzingis, it's a question mark. He missed a lot of last season with a mystery illness. I don't know how often he's going to be on the court, but I really like him with this team, and I really like Nikhil. I think I've convinced myself at Atlanta number 3. I think I've convinced myself of that. Just because I still question, or also Orlando feels very injury prone. That's kind of been an issue for them, and I love their defense, but I just do think that the shooting is going to still be a problem. They were horrific last year. Like, absolutely terrible shooting the 3-ball. Is Franz's jumper going to come back? How consistent is Paolo's 3-point shot going to be? Or Jalen Suggs? I don't really know. But with the Hawks, obviously defensively, when you have Trae Young, there are going to be issues. But with Dyson there, and Reece Shea, and Jalen Johnson, and Porzingis, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, like, there were just so many weapons to kind of hide him. I think this is going to be the best Hawks season in a little while. So I feel pretty decent about this. I know I haven't moved Detroit at all. Like, they're still a 6 seed. They were 6 seed last year, and maybe they could take that jump with Ivy coming back and with Asar Thompson. If they bring back Malik Beasley, I'll feel better about them taking a jump, because I do think they need that type of microwave 3-point shooter to play off of Cade. He was so big for them last year in that role, as was Tim Hardaway Jr., who they lost. We'll see what happens with Malik Beasley now that it's reported that he's out of like that probe, so he can be signed. Apparently the Cavs and Knicks have contacted him. If either one of them grab him, that is a massive, massive boost to their teams. But if Detroit can bring him back, I think that's a plus. I do think Duncan Robinson is going to be fun with this team. I'm excited to see him in this system, but he's not exactly that same type of player as a Malik Beasley, who again was out there having one of the best shooting seasons ever last year. Karis LeVert is going to be interesting, can put the ball in his hands and make some things happen, but I think they will miss Dennis Schroeder. Cade's going to be unbelievable. Asar, Ivy, Tobias Harris was really solid last year. Jalen Durant, like, they have a bunch of young guys that could take a jump. Maybe it's smarter to put them 5 and Philly 6, because, we don't know what's going to happen with Philly's injuries, obviously. And with Detroit, I trust guys to more so stay on the court than I do with Philadelphia, but I think overall, talent-wise, I might lean Philly just a little bit. I don't think Paul George is going to be as bad as he was this past year. I think McCain and Maxey are awesome, but it probably is just safer to go this route. Milwaukee, a 7 or an 8. I feel like that's kind of around their range for me. Some people are going to have them a lot higher and say that this East is weak. And yeah, like, if everything goes their way, sure. But I just can't see a team that has either Miles Turner, love Miles Turner, really good player, but I can't see him being the 2 option for a very successful team. It's going to be Giannis and then by committee. I think it's going to be a lot like the Golden State Warriors from a couple of years ago, the year that they missed the playoffs, where Klay Thompson really just couldn't cut it as a second option anymore. And it's like some nights it's Wiggins, I guess. And is it Kuminga this night? And Pajemski? Like, I think it's going to be that type of thing where you have this superstar player who's doing everything he can to elevate this offense, and he has no real second option, and it's going to cause them to come plummeting down. Like, Kuzma can't be that guy. Nowhere near consistent enough. And I don't think Bobby Portis can be that guy, or Miles Turner. I don't trust anybody in their guard room to be that guy. I don't think there's anybody on this roster that has that consistent capability or anything even close to it. I think if Giannis has an off night, they're probably just going to lose. And luckily for them, Giannis doesn't have that very often. I feel like some people have taken me being lower in the Bucks as a Giannis hate, or that I don't trust in Giannis. That's not true. I trust in Giannis more than almost anybody in the sport. But I just think it's a really weak supporting cast. And I don't trust Doc Rivers as a coach either. So I feel good about Milwaukee being a playing team below these 6 squads. Miami, like, I actually think they're going to be pretty solid this year. Like, obviously, not having Jimmy, they're nowhere near scared when it comes to playoff time. But Hero was really good. Wiggins is really solid. Norman Powell, obviously a career season last year. I'm excited to see what he does in Miami. Bam, Khalil Ware could be a jump candidate. It's a pretty good team over there in Miami. Davion Mitchell was so good. Kind of hate that they trade away Haywood Highsmith. I liked him on that team, but salary dump, maybe they'll do something with that eventually, which, they did kind of sign Drew Smith to a longer term deal. So maybe that's all they were doing. I don't know. We'll see with Miami. They're going to be solid, especially in this Eastern Conference with Indiana as beat up as they are. They are a team that I could see still taking this 8 seed over Miami because even without Halliburton last year, they didn't have the best record, but they were competitive. And even with Halliburton playing pretty bad, like they stayed afloat enough at the beginning of the season to eventually, of course, make the run, be where they were in the standings and end up making it to the NBA Finals, going to a Game 7. But I think without him and Miles Turner, there's just a couple of big blows. The center position feels like it could be a revolving door where they're trying to figure out who is that guy. You're going to ask a lot out of Nembhard and Mathurin and Nesmith and Toppin to pick up the slack and try and orchestrate the offense, and Tej McConnell. I don't think any of those guys come close to what Halliburton can do. They're still really deep. They're still really solid. They will be competitive. They will be a top 10 team, maybe even a top 8 team if they can leapfrog Miami. I honestly think Indiana shouldn't mind if they're in this spot and kind of just figure out, what guys in the roster can do in more expanded roles before Halliburton comes back and, who's going to be your center, stuff like that. Boston, I think I'm still going to have them here as like a 10. I'm tempted to move up Toronto. I've talked about this a million times. I have no idea what they're going to look like. They're really interesting to me, and I should probably still make a full video on them because they're super intriguing, and I want to know, what is this team going to look like? Got no idea. I think I just leave Boston a little bit more. So I think this is where I'm at right now in the Eastern Conference. Sets up some fun matchups. We would get, unfortunately, a Cleveland-Miami rematch where the Cavs completely smoked the Heat last year at like a historic rate. But they're a little bit better now, so maybe it's different. The Knicks versus the Bucks, Giannis going up against Cat in that front court. Can he have a monster series? The Knicks are still going to win that, but I'd be curious to see how they defend up against Giannis and if Giannis can put up these historic, ridiculous numbers. We would get Atlanta versus Philadelphia. Trae Young, last time he faced off against Philly in a playoff series, he ended their dreams of a conference finals in that Game 7. And a very different looking Hawks team, but one that is better now, in my opinion, than the one that went to the conference finals a couple of years ago. And then you get Detroit versus Orlando, which is, battle of two of the brightest young stars in the league with Paolo and Cade as well as Franz and Jay Knive, and you've got Asar Thompson trying to slow a Franz or Paolo. Is he capable of that? I think there's a lot of fun stuff there. And then one of those two teams facing off against Cleveland. Can Cleveland finally get over the hump and make it to a conference finals, or does like a Detroit or an Orlando shock the world? You get, if it's Knicks versus Hawks, not this time in the first round, but it's Trae Young going to Madison Square Garden trying to make it to the conference finals for the first time since 2021. Even though the Eastern Conference is considered weak, there are so many fun storylines, and I do think if we got a Knicks-Cavs conference finals, which I do believe is probably what's going to happen, those are my two best teams in the East, I think it would be incredible. I think it'd be a really fun series. I think it'd be back and forth. And, then it's either the Cavs without LeBron for the first time in forever being an NBA Finals team, or it's the Knicks making it back to the finals for the first time in a billion years. And then they're 4 wins away from a championship going to the Knicks, which is crazy. So yeah, these are my Eastern Conference thoughts right now. I think those top two teams are kind of in a tier. Then I think 3 down to 6 is kind of a tier. Milwaukee's kind of in their own tier, I guess, and then it's like Miami, Indiana, Boston, Toronto. I think if I did have to pick one of these teams to jump up into this spot instead of Boston, it probably would be the Raptors, just because I could see a world where the young guys take jumps, they're healthier, it clicks, they really get it going, better than I think they're going to. Like maybe it could be the Bulls, or just this perpetual playing team, like they always kind of exist in that range. Charlotte maybe actually stays healthy. I don't want to bet on that. But yeah, these are my thoughts on the Eastern Conference right now. Let me know down below in the comments, what is your biggest discrepancy with my list? Where would you rank these teams? What are your thoughts? What are your most intriguing storylines? If this is the way it played out, what would you most be excited about when it comes to a series, things like that. But yeah, for the moment, I appreciate you watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. Yeah, I'll see y'all later. Everyone say it back.